Still following breaking news, hundreds of people pouring onto the tarmac at Kabul's International Airport, desperately seeking a route out of Afghanistan following the Taliban's sudden seizure of power. Isabel Rosales is live in D.C. with the very latest.
President Biden is doubling down. He says that his choice to withdraw troops from Afghanistan, U.S. troops, was the right one. He does acknowledge that the collapse of the Afghan government to the Taliban happened much quicker than anticipated. But Biden says he would not pass this war along to a fifth U.S. president. President Biden cutting his trip to Camp David short to address the chaos in Afghanistan.
Our mission in Afghanistan was never supposed to have been nation building.
Outside the U.S. Embassy in Kabul, the Taliban celebrates taking control of the capital. While at the airport, crowds cling to American military planes, desperate to escape.
People are crying out for help to not be abandoned.
Among the many fearful, interpreters and other allies who assisted the U.S. military.
It is gut-wrenching. These are people we relied on, that we promised that we wouldn't leave them behind.
Civilians struggling to understand the rapid speed of Kabul's fall.
Actually, I feel nothing right now. We want peace.
Back in the U.S., many are doing the same.
Afghanistan political leaders gave up and fled the country.
The White House's national security team is shifting the blame to the Afghan government and troops.
American troops cannot and should not be fighting in a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves.
Now, the State Department says they are working with other countries to bring vulnerable citizens to safety.
We will defend our people with devastating force if necessary.
The Pentagon is defending this chaotic withdrawal and is taking issue with it being labeled as a failure. The press secretary there says that they plan for every scenario with withdrawing out of Afghanistan, but says it would have been difficult for anyone to predict what happened there in Kabul. Live in Washington, I'm Isabel Rosales.
All right, we want to continue our team coverage on this still very developing situation. You saw those scenes that are playing out at Kabul's airport. That's where CNN's Nick Patton-Walsh is. He filed this report from the scene just a short time ago. I'll play it out.
I've just come back from travelling up towards it, and we got actually up to the main entry checkpoint of that particular airport facility, essentially the last piece of Afghanistan that the United States has control over. And fascinatingly, the Taliban are the ones at that sort of entry checkpoint, doing crowd control, to be honest. We saw them essentially telling people to get back, a lot surging towards that particular entrance, and any entrance they could find, often rushing at those checkpoints, being pushed back. I saw one man who'd got up on one of those enormous concrete walls that you see surrounding the airport, trying to get over. Utter chaos, occasional gunfire, and of course the Taliban making use of vehicles given to the Afghan security forces by the Americans. But it was bizarre to see essentially the people who've been flooding the American side of the airport, or the American-controlled airport, being held back by the enemy the US has fought for 20 years or so. It does seem as though the Taliban want to show order and their ability to control the situation here, but the scenes inside the airport are utterly shocking. A massive operation afoot here, and one that of course is imperiled by the fact it's surrounded by the Taliban.
Well, our coverage certainly continues tonight on the NBC Nightly News on KHNL. The general who commanded U.S. troops in Afghanistan calls the situation there disastrous with grave moral consequences. Retired General David Petraeus, who is also the former director of the CIA, spoke with Lester Holt. Here's a preview.
Well, General Petraeus, let me begin by asking you point blank, did the U.S. just lose the war in Afghanistan?
Well, certainly the outcome, I think, is catastrophic. It's also heartbreaking. It's tragic. And I do think there were alternative approaches, options that we, in fact, should have considered. I counseled those for many years. But we are where we are now. And I think what's most important at this moment in time is to realize that there are many that we have so far left behind. And we must do everything we can with all the resources available to us to ensure that we meet the moral obligation to them.
And of course, we will be following this developing story on air and online. Let's get to those coronavirus numbers now. The state health department is reporting 539 new COVID cases today. The breakdown by island shows 80 cases on the Big Island, 14 on Kauai, 49 on Maui, 3 on Molokai. Oahu has 376 cases, and 17 people were diagnosed out of state. Meanwhile, with Big Island healthcare facilities on the brink, much needed relief arrived today. Healthcare workers from the mainland arrived at Hilo Medical Center to help manage the influx of COVID patients. Here's a new photo we just got into our newsroom of some of them. The intensive care unit there is also full, and at Kona Community Hospital, they're set to get more clinical staff today as well. For an update on the situation, here's Elena Kabatu, Hilo Medical Center's Director of Public Affairs.
And we will welcome them with open arms, and it'll be a tremendous impact. They will be assigned to our COVID unit, and that help is coming right when we desperately need it. I mean, we need to have our patients in the correct place to give them the appropriate level of care. We can't just float ICU nurses down to the emergency department to give the most excellent care, but we do have to do that when the ICU is full. So our preference is to treat our patients, especially the critical care patients, in our ICU. Right now we have plans for setting up our 10th acute care module, or we've identified another facility called an alternate care facility with the county. We do have our contingency plans in place, but we are just not quite there yet. We are trying our very best to manage our patient load within the hospital, and we are in constant communication with officials who can help us in the event that we have to go to an alternate way of caring for our patients.
Well, today on Sunrise, we had a chance to talk with Hawaii County Mayor Mitch Roth about the ongoing surge and what, if any, further restrictions are being considered. I want to play out a portion of that interview.
With the increased numbers, there are a lot of people who say that the tourists are bringing that in. Is that something you're seeing on your island? And is that an area where you might want to try to restrict some of the people who are coming to your island, whether it's a cap on hotels or restaurants?
What we're seeing across the state is tourists are probably less than 2% of the people that are getting affected and impacting our hospitals. What it is, we know the problem. The problem is us. We're bringing this back ourselves. We're not, hanging. We're not distancing. Tourists are generally in their own little bubbles most of the time. What's happening with our local people, our families, we're coming back, we're going to parties, we're meeting with friends and family, and that's the big issue. However, if we have to close down the state, everybody's going to be impacted. So, that's kind of what we're looking at right now.
What about youth sports, Mayor? Is there concern that it's spreading there? Are you thinking about shutting that down? I mean, we're talking about a population in particular, those that are younger than 12 that don't have access to the vaccine.
Yeah, I hate to have to close anything down, but yes, we are thinking about that because we have seen kids in sports getting ill, and not so much maybe from the outside, but they're gathering together, they're riding over together, and so it is something that we are looking at, and we continue to have discussions about these things.
We recently spoke with Lieutenant Governor Josh Green, and he warns we could see more COVID restrictions soon as hospitalizations soar.
Because everyone is hoping that the decrease in gathering sizes will make some difference. But the truth is, as long as there are unvaccinated individuals that are going out without any consideration for others, they're going to catch COVID and they're going to spread COVID, and it's going to be in big numbers. The way to avoid restrictions, the way to avoid significant steps backward, is for either people to get vaccinated or to not gather and put anybody at risk for spreading, which means laying low, not going out if you're unvaccinated, wearing masks. It's quite simple. But the hospital numbers are a grave concern. At 300, we maxed, as you know, a year ago. And we are facing another 350 to 400 hospitalizations in the next 2 weeks. The average hospitalization lasts 10 to 12 days now. So the hospital numbers are going to go through the roof if we don't get things under control. And it's all because of individuals who are being scared to not be vaccinated, being bullied to not get vaccinated. Now, if people make that decision out of a deep philosophical belief, I respect that, in which case they should get tested weekly and wear masks religiously. That would be also the next best thing. And I respect people who make that decision.
A reminder, you can get tested for free at the Honolulu airport. The city extended its no-cost COVID testing again through Saturday due to high demand. You have to pre-register online and results are available within 6 hours. Free testing is also available through the end of the month at Aloha Stadium. Here's a view of the long lines from the last couple days. Tests will be administered Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays in the bus lot. You don't need an appointment, but if you're planning to get tested at either site, be prepared to wait. We have more information at hawaiinewsnow.com.
Starting today, all state and county workers will need to show proof of vaccination or be required to take a COVID test every week. Workers who did not get a shot had until today to apply for an exemption. That includes those with medical or religious reasons for not getting vaccinated. For employees who did not get an exemption, they have to pay for their own test. And those who only have their first dose have until September 16th to get their second shot. The vaccination requirement goes into effect next Monday for all teachers and other Department of Education employees. Sammy Salina interviewed an education official this morning to learn more about that.
So we're actually joined by the complex superintendent here, Rochelle Mohoy. Thank you so much for joining us. You're the Farrington Kaiser Kalani Complex Area Superintendent.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, because you guys have something pretty big coming up this week, is the vaccine testing requirement. So how is that all being implemented here?
So it's really a testing requirement. So all employees, including volunteers at the school level, need to be tested once a week in order to report to work. In order to avoid being tested every week, they can show proof of vaccination. So everyone beginning late last night can start logging into our employee system and attesting to whether they've been fully vaccinated and providing proof of that vaccination in our system. And for those that just begun or started their vaccination, will kind of get a buy or a grace period in which they do not have to get tested every week until they complete their second dose, if they need to have that second dose.
Right. All right. Good details there. So we are seeing, a rising number of cases in the community and growing concerns from parents on whether or not they may or may not have to shift to online learning. Dr. Char said that there isn't a threshold, but are you guys preparing for that case if you have to go to distance learning again?
Well, we're hopeful we don't have to go to distance learning. I think there's one thing that we did learn last year is we kind of built the plane and flew it at the same time, but we definitely learned and made advancements in technology and the use of technology in schools. So all of our schools are prepared, at least for the FKK complex area. We've talked about in the summer about having students and teachers be prepared if they need to shift. We're hopeful that they don't have to shift, but we've been preparing just in case we need to shift by a class or by a school or by the system, but we're hoping not.
All right. Rochelle, thank you again for joining us. We really do appreciate you having you here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
As the nation's COVID case count climbs higher, some places are returning to a sort of normalcy with precautions in place. Femi Redwood has more.
If you want to eat indoors, work out, or watch a movie in the Big Apple, you'll soon need to show proof of vaccination. The city's Key to NYC Pass goes into effect on Tuesday, requiring employees and patrons of restaurants, gyms, and indoor entertainment venues to show they got the shot.
I've got my app. I'm ready to go. If it helps get businesses up and running and going again, yeah, I'm all for it.
I'm not going to get vaccinated just so I can go out to eat.
New York's mayor is confident the requirement will drive up vaccination rates.
It's going to be a reason for people to get vaccinated, particularly young people. And we know how important that is.
Children younger than 12 who were not yet eligible for the COVID vaccine will still be allowed into venues.
While the city is urging compliance, the passport rules won't be enforced until next month, giving businesses a chance to get up to speed.
Welcome back to school! Hundreds of thousands of children in the Los Angeles area returned to school Monday for the first time in more than a year.
I felt happy because I don't like being on Zoom.
Mass, periodic testing, and daily health checks are required for everyone in the Los Angeles Unified School District.
We are going to keep them safe on campus.
Some Texas school districts are battling the governor's ban on mask mandates, and several districts in Georgia have had to send children home after exposures forced many students and teachers to quarantine. Femi Redwood, CBS News, New York.
Americans on food assistance are about to get the biggest jump that benefit has ever seen, 27%. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, is increasing the food benefit given to a person from an average of $121 to $169 starting in October. It's the first time the Department of Agriculture has recalculated the cost of feeding a person since 2006. Congress ordered that review in 2018 under the Farm Bill. Even though it passed during the Trump administration, Republicans are balking at the $20 billion increased price for running the program. Consumer advocates have argued the other way, that the Thrifty Food Plan is too low because it makes unrealistic assumptions about food affordability.
Now let's get an update on those arrival numbers into the state. International visitor traffic still isn't happening. Fewer than 700 international arrivals on Friday and fewer than 200 from Japan. In pre-COVID times, it was sending more than 5,000 visitors a day. Domestic travel numbers still top 2019 to all islands, but we're starting to fall below 30,000 arrivals a day, a possible sign the Delta variant is a deterrent. More international developing news to get to now. More than 1,300 people have died following a powerful earthquake on Saturday in Haiti. We got Vladimir Duthier on the ground with the latest developments as the death toll is only expected to rise.
It is a state of emergency here. A nation crushed under the weight of yet another natural disaster. Hospitals are overwhelmed by incoming patients as rescue workers search for survivors under mounds of concrete and debris. In the destruction, there are brief moments of hope, like this woman and a young boy being rescued from the rubble of a toppled building. The epicenter of the 7.2 magnitude quake is about 80 miles west of the capital, Port-au-Prince. The coastal town of Molokai was one of the hardest hit, and its hospital is at capacity. A private plane is flying patients to Port-au-Prince. It's a striking blow for a country that still hasn't fully recovered from a series of natural disasters. A devastating earthquake hit in 2010, where an estimated 300,000 were killed. I spent nearly a month reporting from Haiti immediately after, and witnessed the horror that Haitians faced.
We need more people down here.
In 2016, we came back after Hurricane Matthew leveled towns along the coast.
We understand the dire situation we are in, but the most important thing is we will come out of it.
Brochit Edmond is Haiti's ambassador to the U.S. He says the rebuilding effort will be an arduous one, especially after the assassination of Haiti's President Jovenel Moïse last month led to even more instability. But he says Haiti's interim government needs to step up and rebuild a stronger nation.
We cannot avoid any earthquake, but at least when the earthquake comes, there will be better resistance of those buildings and every other infrastructure, so they won't collapse like a house of cards.
There is another saying in Haiti, and it's emblazoned on the national flag, and it embodies what Haiti has stood for since it became the first black independent nation in the Western Hemisphere. L'union fait la force. In union, there is strength, and Haitians will need that strength more than ever in the days and weeks ahead as Tropical Storm Grace threatens to bring mudslides and also to complicate relief efforts. Vladimir Duthier, CBS News, Port-au-Prince, Haiti.
And we'll have much more on that still developing story coming up on your evening news on NBC and CBS. I want to take you outside now. Let's take you to the North Shore, Waimea Bay, 84 degrees out there. We're also monitoring some tropical disturbances in the East Pacific. Let's turn it over to Billy V with more on that.
Let's give you the particulars right now on Hurricane Linda. Once again, some 2,100 miles east of Hilo. Winds are 105 miles per hour, gusts to 125 miles per hour, and it's moving west-southwesterly at 9 miles per hour. So today, a Category 2, probably tomorrow as well, according to the forecast track here. It's going to weaken to a Category 1, go to a tropical storm status, a regular storm, and then a remnant low by the time it gets just north of the Hawaiian Islands if it stays on this track. So once again, it could bring us some rain showers coming up this coming weekend. It could also affect our east-facing shores. We might see some of that east-facing swell coming up here in midweek. Right now, it's 1 to 3 feet. Over on the south-facing shore, 7 to 10 feet. That's a slowly rising, and then once again, that'll be 7 to 10 by this afternoon, this evening. So they may also put a small craft advisory in effect for Hawaiian waters, a high surf advisory in effect for the south-facing shores by this afternoon. Let's take a look at the 7-day forecast for you. We lose the trade winds today, partly cloudy skies, which will mean for the next couple of days, interior showers and also maybe some sprinkles over the leeward sides. The trade winds are due back on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and that Sunday forecast, it depends on what Hurricane Linda brings us. We're watching it carefully here at your severe weather station. Get the latest on air, online, on your mobile device, and at HawaiiNewsNow.com.
All right. Let's see what the internet is talking about today. And I love these stories, these high-priced auction records. And you start us off with a car, right?
Yeah, so remember the good old days when a couple $100,000 could get you an exotic car, and that was a lot? Well, meet the 1995 McLaren F1. This baby just sold at auction for, get this, almost $20.5 million. Woo. And only 64 of this particular model were ever made. Now, it was initially purchased by a Japanese collector and changed hands a couple times to other collectors who all apparently kept the car in meticulous condition. Now, it has less than 250 miles on the odometer, so this is clearly a vehicle meant to display, not to drive, even if you could find anyone to insure it.
I would love to take a ride in that one.
Pretty.
Love those like batwing doors too. All right, got another record-setting auction to talk about. This time, a baseball card. And many of you probably have seen pictures of this card actually. The T206 Honus Wagner card sold for $6.6 million yesterday. Most valuable sports card of all time. This is a key part of a very famous set of trading cards from around 1909, 1911, made by the American Tobacco Company. Interesting that American Tobacco Company was making it, and that's what makes this card so special, because according to legend, the Pittsburgh Pirates Hall of Famer prohibited the production of this card to continue because he did not want it to be associated with the sale of cigarettes. So that was a way back then to be thinking that sort of progressively, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. And while most baseball teams have a bat boy or a bat girl, one minor league team has a four-legged friend. Slider is the bat dog for the Myrtle Beach Pelicans, an affiliate of the Chicago Cubs. Now, after he was sidelined last year because of the pandemic, Slider made his return to the diamond and got back to doing what he loves the most, retrieving bats. Now, he is the third bat dog to be part of the Pelicans organization.
I want a Slider.
It's cute.
All right, really quick entertainment news.
Yeah, so one of Hawaii's favorite comedians is coming back to Honolulu. The Blaisdell Center announced dates for Joe Coy's Funny is Funny World Tour on November 26th and 27th. Now, tickets range from about $56 to $86 plus service fees. Pre-sale starts this Thursday at 6 a.m. online only at Ticketmaster. And it opens to the public at 10 a.m. And back in 2017, Joe Coy sold out 11 shows at the Blaisdell and filmed a Netflix special there in 2018.
Excited for that. You guys, that's going to do it for This Is Now on this Monday. We'll be back here with you tomorrow from the H&N Digital Center. Have a good one.